Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and it's finally time. The Nagash mod for Total War Warhammer 2 has finally made its way to Warhammer 3. Now if you remember this mod from Warhammer 2, you'll know it was absolutely gigantic, and it's the same but with a few added changes here and there. The faction has really become its own. So we're going to jump in, we're going to talk about a few things, but before anything, let's talk about the faction effects and lord effects. Also, I hope my video is coming out more or less at the same time as the mod has launched. Obviously, a big thank you to the mod team behind this. It was very, very kind. Yeah, let's just jump right in. So, faction effects can bring undead factions under heal and can elevate certain legendary lords to become Mortarchs. Army capacity +2, faction-wide. Diplomatic relations +80 with vampiric factions and followers of Nagash. Diplomatic relations -30 with all factions. And when we jump into the lord effects, we have the following: unit capacity +2 for bone golems, undead horde growth +5 for all units in army, miscast base chance -25%, and finally the passive ability, the curse. So you'll start your campaign in Immortal Empires at Nagash is HERE. Nagash himself is very much in his husk form, and you're going to be trying to allow him to regain his power. There's a series of quests that you're going to have to do for that, but we'll get to that a little bit later. You will be fighting a lot of factions. Keep in mind that a lot of factions will dislike you, so the harder the campaign, the likely the choice that Imrik is going to turn around on you. Skarbrand's going to instantly declare war on you anyway, but don't you worry too much about that. In terms of main construction, it's going to work very similar to the Tomb Kings. You're basically playing a Tomb King faction, obviously with a few changes here and there, as you will have access to a bunch of different units. There are a few unique things here and there, but it's going to play pretty much identically to the Tomb Kings in terms of construction, so if you're used to that, you know, with unit capacity and so on, then you won't really have too much of an issue when you start playing this campaign. Now, Nagash himself is in his husk form, so he's not going to be at his strongest. He's still going to be very, very powerful, keep that in mind. You're just going to have to go and do a series of quests to be able to actually make him the extremely terrifying Lord of Undeath that we know from the end times. But he does have a few unique skills. He has access to some of the books of Nagash, which we'll talk about a little bit later when he gets super powered. He does have access to the Law of Undeath, which is a very, very good law of magic too. Overall, even in his husk form, Nagash is going to be quite the terrifying character. He won't have access to all of his unique items just yet. Again, husk. If you do want to focus quite heavily on getting him up to the strong points, it could take around 20-25 turns depending on how you play, sometimes a little bit more on your difficulty. It's fairly quick and straightforward, I must say. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves, because there's a few other things to discuss. Nagash and his cough cough loyal Mortarchs will also act as pseudo-hordes, meaning that you'll be able to recruit on the go. You won't be able to get access to all of the goodies here and there, but you'll definitely be able to build up your armies and keep as aggressive as you want to be. And with a campaign like this, you're going to want to be as aggressive as possible, especially once you start taking into account, you know, diplomatic relations and so on, and everyone attacking you. Now, the faction's going to have access to rights, and as you can see here, there's 4, all focused around Dominion, because Nagash has pretty much a one-trick pony. Seriously, his law is, I'm going to take over the world, I'm going to take over the world, I'm going to take over the world. It's very Pokemon villain. But you can unlock them pretty easily. One of them is reach turn 35, the other one's get Nagash to rank 8, build the Black Pyramid up to level 4, and finally conquer and build 10 regions. All natural that you're going to do throughout your campaign, especially since the Black Pyramid stuff is literally just you going there to take over and finally regain your strength. Now, technology is going to focus on 2 different routes. The first one being ritual, which is going to focus on boosting up the capabilities of your warriors, such as Tomb Guard and so on. This is going to focus on your main campaign too, so it's stuff that's going to take a while for you to get because you're going to need to get certain buildings. The branch itself in this section might not be very large, but it is quite the time sink, so you're going to take a while. It's going to take you a good amount of your actual campaign to be able to get all the way to the end, which is the final step. And seeing how good that final tier is, considering, you know, -40 upkeep for all armies, yeah, you're going to want to get there and try get there as fast as possible before other factions start realizing that you are the big problem. Now, when it comes to this second version, this is Mortarchs, which is going to follow you unlocking other characters such as Arkan, Manfred, Neferata, Krell. There's a lot of them there, and you've also got a bunch of bonuses for your other stuff too, for other units. This tree itself is fairly large, as it's going to get you to a bunch of new characters, and obviously this means that you're going to have so many legendary lords that you're not really going to care too much about minor characters, that's for sure. Though do keep in mind that having some armies whilst you're waiting for the Mortarchs to come is definitely going to be in your favor, as the last thing you want is to get destroyed because you were just holding out a army slot for, you know, Arkan or something. Now, I'm going to let this play out with the music so you can see all the text. Keep in mind, there is a bug in the build that I'm on with the Dread King and Dieter Hellschnitz character tech trees not showing up just yet. That's later down the line. I'm not sure if this is because you need to wait for Big Daddy Nagash, or it's just a bug right now where it shows up sometimes and it doesn't show up the other time. Coming in with a very quick edit here. So, regarding Dieter, you need Mixu's legendary lords to be able to get Dieter Hellschnitz for Nagash, and regarding the Dread King, you won't be able to get him until the OVN faction for the Dread King releases. So the reason why it could show up is because it's a little buggy, but I'll leave this in here so you can see the tech anyway. And yeah, I mean, you can already use the Dieter, you just can't use the Dread King. I don't think there's a public release date regarding that mod. I don't even know the release date for that mod. So one thing that is important to note with this faction is that construction can vary. Here you can see Suddenburg, which is very normal. Everything is like as intended. But when you start moving to, say, for example, the Desolation of Nagash, which is very well known for, say, warpstone mining, well, that's going to work more like an outpost. So you've got a few settlements which work as outposts and some that work as standard. The outpost ones, yeah, focus on warpstone because warpstone can be quite useful. As warpstone is going to be a valuable resource for you. You get it by mining it, and even some refunds. And you use it on rituals, other stuff, and even some loot stuff. So it's all a matter of this becoming a core resource. You'll not notice it too much. You'll just naturally generate it as you start expanding your kingdom. So yeah, don't worry too much about it. One great use for warpstone is that you can use 10 for Nagash's will. This means that you can force another undead faction to serve you. It only works for undead factions, so you can use it, say, for example, here on Manfred, and he will become your vassal. Now, don't you worry, he'll still become your legendary lord should you decide to also then take him as a Mortarch, but early on, he's in the area, he can be annoying. Early on, you're going to want to subjugate him to have some help against, say, for example, well, etc. Or pretty much any other enemy around the region of the Southlands who is going to look at you like public enemy number one. Don't get me wrong, you are, but yeah, you know what I mean. Obviously, when taking over a full region, you do have some unique edicts, and these will depend on, well, pretty much how you play, what your personal preferences and so on. There is one which is quite useful, which will increase the income made from raiding by 10% for all armies, and this does stack, by the way, but factions will start to hate you more and more, and this will be Something that if you want to risk for it, it's high risk, high reward. Now, we've been talking a lot about the faction, but we have to talk about Nagash himself. Obviously, Nagash is in his husk form. I've stated this before, and you have to go and make sure that you can go and rebuild him. So, you're going to have to do a series of quests. Early on, it's not really much of an issue. As long as you just keep to it. Think of it kind of like how the story mode for Three Kingdoms worked. You don't have to do it, but you get more rewards if you do it. First mission is super simple, kill the Skaven faction right in front of you, and then you're going to have to start rebuilding Nagash is HERE. Slowly but surely you'll get there. It doesn't really take too long. If anything, just make sure that you don't spend all your treasury, as, well, it's kind of important, isn't it? Next mission after that is just maintain 20 units. Since you're able to raise the dead, you should have a full stack pretty much by turn 3 or 4 anyway, so don't you worry about that too much. The only thing is try and go for the cheaper units, because obviously upkeep is still a thing and you won't have high production from the start of your campaign. That's something that you'll gradually build as you start improving Nagash, especially with his pseudo horde too. The fourth mission attached is also very simple. It's just literally take over the Desolation of Nagash and hold it for a turn, and there you go. The fifth mission is to go to Qatar. You just have to take a character over there. You can take Nagash himself or a hero. By the way, right in front of the Desolation of Nagash is a teleporter, so you don't actually have to walk there yourself. That's something that I completely forgot about myself when I first started testing the mod out. But hey, I've never really said that I'm a smart guy now, have I? Now, when you get there, you'll also be able to start researching to unlock Archon. It doesn't take too long, and that will be your second legendary lord. Obviously makes sense that the right-hand man becomes the first legendary lord that you will unlock throughout your campaign. From there, it's go to the Black Pyramid. Doesn't really take too long, few turns here and there. Keep in mind that Numas and Khemri might declare war on you. Numas not so much, but Khemri, Cetra is one of those characters which obviously does not like you. Before we continue, you might notice that Khemri and a few other locations, such as Nagash is HERE, are considered to be places of death. Now, these places are for your main campaign. As you start progressing and so on, you'll want to eventually take those over, make a note of them, but you do have quests which kind of lead you those ways anyway. Besides, you'll likely pick up Khemri before you go directly into the Black Pyramid, mostly because the Black Pyramid itself is quite a difficult area to take by yourself. Now you've finally made it to the Black Pyramid, all you have to do is raise it, and this is where things get a little bit interesting. You see, you're going to have to wait for 5 turns to be able to do so, and a lot of enemies are going to be aware of this. They're going to come to attack you, you're going to have to hold out, as you can easily fail this mission. Keep that in mind. Again, why I said you might want to take Khemri beforehand, so you have a base of operations to build up a secondary army. As soon as you decide to click on it, Nagash will go away for a while. He counts as dying of old age, and you'll have to pick up another character. Then you will notice that there's a bunch of Skaven armies around there. I believe it's 5 to be in fact, and they're going to attack the Black Pyramid. You're going to want to take them out as fast as possible. If you have multiple armies there, like I do, I have the standard army that used to belong to Nagash, and Archon is there also. I can start taking them out. This is an easy mode, by the way, as obviously it's for a showcase video. If it was in a harder difficulty, I would not be able to do a auto-resolve and I'd have to fight it normally. But if you manage to survive all 5 turns, Nagash is then reborn in his proper end-time state. And he looks freaking awesome. Obviously, you have to keep in mind that the Black Pyramid itself is also a very valuable city, so try not to lose that. But when it comes to Nagash, yeah, you've got some really cool bonuses. He is, well, Nagash, he is the end times variant that everyone knows and loves, or more so fears, because he was horrendously overpowered. But then again, the end times are a silly time and a silly supplement, and yeah. But he also has access to all the books of Nagash at this point, so this means that you'll be able to boost up some of your armies as they count as auxiliaries here. He's also got access to spells, once again, it's the Law of Undeath. We'll be talking about that a little bit later on. There is so much here, it's absolutely insane, and I think it's really cool to see the fact that this is what people imagine from a official release in the future, right? Everyone expects getting a husk version of Nagash and then building him up, getting all the stuff to rebuild him, to reform him, to allow him to be the god of undeath. Let's be honest, the end time stuff was very silly, but Nagash had a prominent role there, and a lot of people did enjoy at least his parts, mostly because he was as paranoid as ever, and he was as, well, psychotic as ever, if not even more so. As you can tell by his stats, he is immensely powerful, and obviously he's going to be, considering who he is. the character is going to dominate on the battlefield. The more skill points you unlock, the scarier he gets, especially when you start getting all your unique items, all the other skill points to boost up your army a little bit. You're going to be an absolute terror on the battlefield, and this is when you're going to take part in his vision of a world of undeath. After Nagash is reborn, this is where you'll get more missions, and these will be to unlock your other Motarks, so for example Neferata, Krell, Manfred, even more of his other actual storyline missions, because there is a lot to do here. It's a very long campaign. Keep in mind that once Nagash is reborn, you get the short campaign victory. The long one is then this that continues it. And yeah, it's going to take a while for you to do all this. The idea is I'm not going to show you everything to do with the campaign, mostly because limited time. And secondly, well, you guys want to explore this. This is the Nagash mod. You've been waiting a long time for this. Let's continue on. You will have a new type of hero, which you can start unlocking as soon as you get Archon. These are the Morghast Archers, and they're pretty cool. Very fast moving, they're able to do a lot of damage. The Morghasts were one of the units that came out during the end times, though they were given lore that they always existed, which is something that we're expecting officially eventually down the line. You can get them here, and they're really, really interesting looking. Like, they look like the tabletop model, and that's the most important thing. But there's more to this mod. There's actually a lot more. We can look towards the legendary hero Genevieve. I'm not exactly sure what triggered her. I just know that she's part of the roster and she just kind of appeared to Nagash, which came out well. You can get diplomatic relations with humans thanks to her, and it's really uniquely done because Genevieve acts as a diplomat for you. There is a 10% chance at the start of each turn that you could end up getting a peace treaty with a Empire faction, a Kislev faction. It's really, really interesting because I didn't even think something like that was even possible. And yeah, completely blown away. Genevieve is a very popular character. She had her own books and so on back in Black Library time. And it's so cool to see her implemented in the game. She looks great. She looks freaking good. Or if you want another impressive character, there's obviously Neferata, a character which you will pick up eventually, and she will spawn in the northern parts of the World's Edge Mountains. Powerful in her own right, and a character that many people want in the Total War series for obvious reasons. She's got access to a unique skill line, as you can expect, where she's able to do a decent amount of damage. It will make her a lot stronger. She'll be a terror in the battlefield, though keep in mind she will get a lot weaker if she fights against her cousin. Yeah, she loses physical resistance and loses melee defense, which is kind of cool and also very thematic. You'll also get access to the special mounts that they had access to back in the end times. This is also available to Archon and I believe Manfred too. And you'd think with all the time that I've been talking, there's not more to talk about, but there's actually a lot more to this mod. I'm not covering everything because I want you guys to be able to discover stuff for yourselves, as obviously, you know, a lot of people have been waiting for this mod and I don't want to ruin it for you guys, right? But there's going to be a lot of stuff for you to play around with when you start looking towards the roster, as it is absolutely gigantic. You've got a mix of Vampire Coast, Vampire Counts, and also Tomb Kings. You're going to be playing around with a lot of stuff, and this is going to allow you to have that true End Times feel. In the End Times, you could use a mixture of Vampire Counts and Tomb Kings, because Vampire Coast wasn't an army book, but in the lore, all three of them were mixed. But even with just Tomb Kings and Vampire Counts, yeah, it was a hell of a faction to play against on the tabletop, that's for sure. Alright, we're going to start looking towards some unique units added by this mod. The first one are the Skeletal Reapers. Not too much to talk about here. They are low tier infantry, but they're also quite good for armor piercing. Plus, they look kind of cool. Again, a little bit of a throwback to older editions of Warhammer Fantasy. I'm sure you guys can remember those old school miniatures. Fun fact, actually, a lot of units added in this mod play on nostalgia, which I think is really, really cool. So we're going to start moving on. Next, we have the Fell Spectres. So ethereal units, they're able to vanguard, they can cause terror, they can move quite quickly, got a lot of magical damage too. Well, quickly for a undead unit at the very least. The main thing is this is a tar pit unit, very similar to the Spirit Host, that we'll talk about a little bit later on. But there are a lot of units to talk about, such as the Nagash is HERE Guard. You get two flavors of them. These ones are the halberds, and then you've got the sword and shield variant. They are basically your Nagash version of your Tomb Guard, so they've got very similar stats. They're very good at frontline, they're very good at taking down enemy. It's just depending on how you use them, which in all fairness should be used very similar to Grave Guard and, well, Tomb Guard. Sometimes units don't have to be 100% completely original, they just have to have their own feel to it. And when we start looking towards other stuff, this is going to be another nostalgia throwback. Undead chariots. So they're not as good as the Tomb King chariots. You do have access to some Tomb King chariots, don't worry. But it's a throwback to, what was it, 4th edition? Back when the undead factions were one book. They weren't Vampire Counts and Tomb Kings, it was just undead. It always makes me smile seeing these come to life in Total War. It's really, really cool. Again, not the best unit, but it did get a nice smile out of me, so that's the most important thing. Carrion Riders will be your skirmishing flying cavalry, which is pretty good, considering they've got 100 speed. So Canwraith on top of a Carrion. They've got Terror, they've got Vanguard deployment, they're very, very fast. You can use them to harass your enemies without too much of a problem. I've got to say it's a really interesting unit, especially early on. If you can start getting them as soon as possible, you're going to find yourself a little bit easier to deal with, say, for example, Imric, who is going to cause you problems. Anyways, next we have the Sandcrawlers, which are a pretty interesting unit. So they are scaling damage, they've got anti-large, they can stalk too, very much like the Mournguls that you can get with the Vampire Coast and the Vampire Counts ever since the Immortal Empires was released. I kept thinking Tomb Kings for some reason, but yeah, similar kind of use, kind of cool too. I love the look of them. Visually, everything is really cool in this mod, let's be honest there. Glowing Ghouls are also back. I'm not going to make the same Fallout joke I made in Game 2, but Vanguard Deployment, Frenzy, Magical Aura, very, very good at being up close and personal. They're also just very good at ripping apart anything. So you'll want to have a few of these in your army. Keep in mind that you will have some thematic armies here and there, depending on the faction that you decide to play. Bone Golems will act like Kroxigor, and yeah, obviously a little bit slower, but armored and shielded, charge defense against all, they're a defender unit. This is your tanky stuff, and I mean, they do it very, very well. They also look absolutely phenomenal. The speed makes them not as useful, but then again, you are playing an undead faction, so you're not really dealing with, well, speed. You've got chariots and stuff, but that's pretty much it. Next, we got the Morghast. Now, a lot of people don't like them because they're associated with the end times. I personally love the Morghast. I am a big fan of them. So seeing them with this mod and obviously alongside Nagash makes a lot of sense. Very good stats all around. They can cause terror. They're melee experts. They are able to do a lot of damage. They're very fast too. It's a near perfect unit, I must say. I really enjoy the interpretation that the modders have taken onto this. And we also have another little throwback, which is the Bolt Thrower. I know, well, Bone Thrower. But still, yeah, I know it's not the most exciting unit and so on, but again, it's one of these things from like 4th edition, which was really, really nice. And I'm always going to be a sucker for the old stuff, right? It's it's cool. It also reminds me that I've got a bunch of them that I still haven't painted yet, despite having them for many years. So yeah, thanks modders for making me feel bad. And yes, I did forget about the Spirit Host, but here they are. They are an ethereal unit, a very, very good tar pit. They also slow down enemies, which is quite beneficial because if you're trying to catch up to other enemies, especially if they're trying to run away to get in position to shoot you, slow them down with the Spirit Host, and then just catch up with everything else. These are a phenomenal tar pit unit, which takes me back to the tabletop. Once again, 8th edition had Spirit Host. They were redone for the end times. They were overpowered in 8th, I must admit. Like, stupidly overpowered. Good thing it's not like that case here, because believe me, it was bad. So there is the Lore of Undeath, which is a rather cool spell lore. You can see this here, and we're cycling through them. Yeah, unique spells. This is basically the lore that was added in during the end times, which was pretty strong, I'll be very honest. But then again, magic and end times in general was just too much. I must say, it gives me a lot of PTSD going back into this and remembering the terrifying times that Nagash was just horrendously done for the end times. But then again, it was the end times, right? So the spells themselves are quite cool. You've got custom animations to them, which is a really, really cool thing because everything feels unique. They're very, very powerful. I mean, the Hand of Nagash itself can basically two-shot a legendary character. You can see the damage being done to a necromancer. You get loads of really, really cool animations. So you're going to be able to see stuff and not feel like it's been rehashed over and over again, which has been the case for all the laws of Magic. However, Creative Assembly are finally updating laws as time progresses. The battle effects that were available in Warhammer 2 are also here too, so you'll be able to summon in a tomb that will summon in some units for you. You've got some pretty devastating firepower, one use only, but mind you, more than enough. And then finally, you're able to get a small debuff going throughout the whole map, actually, which can reduce enemy leadership, range, melee attack, and speed. It's map-wide for, I believe... Sorry, I just checked. It's for about 100 seconds, which is something that can be quite decisive if you know how to time this correctly, especially when you're going to be doing a big battle with Nagash, as obviously you will also have the pyramid following him around, which is cool, because, I mean, yeah, it makes sense, right? It's his creation. This mod itself is absolutely gigantic. It's just been released. Actually, by the time that I'm finishing rendering this and finishing this project, it's already out to the public, so you guys will be able to play. You can find it in the description below, and I do really highly recommend this mod. It is just amazing. It is DLC quality, and it's so cool. You guys are going to love it. I'm going to leave a custom battle to play out so you guys can check out a Nagash versus Cetra battle. It doesn't really last too long because it is Nagash, the Lord of Undeath, after all. And yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below regarding this mod. And let's start a bit of a discussion. I know you guys have been waiting for this mod ever since it basically got announced in Warhammer 2. And it took a while to get out. And now it's here for Warhammer 3. You guys are going to love it. Have a good day, guys. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Yeah, bye.
destiny.